Welcome to a new biochemistry series. The med scientist is here, and I would like to start off by explaining what even is biochemistry. So biochemistry in molecular terms describes the structures, mechanisms, and chemical processes shared by all organisms and provides the organizing principles that underlie life in all its diverse forms. Basically, it's the molecular logic of life. And an idea I would like to share basically is the cellular dimensions of a cell is limited by diffusion. So what do I mean by that? So the minimum dimension set by each type of biomolecule is required by the cell. So the upper limit dimension is set by the rate of diffusion of the solute molecules in aqueous systems. Smaller cells have a larger ratio of the surface area over the volume. So for smaller cells, this ratio here is greater. And so what this means is that for a larger surface area, every part of the cytoplasm is easily reached by oxygen, for example, diffusing into the cell. But for larger cells, the ratio, this ratio right here, is smaller. And the ratio would decrease, depending on how big the cell is, until the metabolism consumes oxygen faster than diffusion can supply. So therefore, the theoretical upper limit in the cell size, there is a theoretical limit in the cell size because oxygen diffusion is necessary for metabolism. So you can't really say I can create a cell this large, but not enough oxygen can pass through due to the decrease in ratio, versus if you have a smaller cell, it's easily accessible by oxygen. So that is a fundamental theoretical limit to cell size, which is an interesting idea itself. But the three main ideas I want to share to begin with the biochemistry series is the idea of homeostasis. So what is homeostasis? Homeostasis is to maintain stability or equilibrium in spite of changes to environment. So you want to mention that it's the stability or equilibrium in spite of changes to its environment, or to the environment. So basically, you'd want to get a stable equilibrium of the physiological processes. For an example, would be osmosis, water diffusion, diffusion of particles, oxygen for cell metabolism, produce energy, and even you need to get homeostasis of temperature, regulation, and so on. Another idea I'd like to contrast this with is dynamic steady state. So I've got a new paper. Dynamic steady state. So what is the difference between dynamic steady state and homeostasis? Well, dynamic is a good start here. What does that mean? So living organisms in biochemistry, they are in a dynamic steady state. They are not in equilibrium. Equilibrium means the rates of change, which you probably learned in a general chemistry class, of the forward and reverse reactions are equal, the same, the rates. But in living organisms in biochemistry, they're in dynamic steady states, they're not in equilibrium. So what does that mean? It means that if you have a reaction like this, A to B goes to C to D, the equilibrium, the K value, equilibrium constant would be 1, and in that case, delta G would equal 0. If we say the products and reactants concentration equals KEQ. And so what we have here is that the rates of the forward and reverse reactions are not equal if you deviate from this value. And in a dynamic steady state, if we visualize it as a bathtub, so here is a bathtub, and then you have water flowing into the bathtub. And then you have a spout with water exiting. So in this dynamic steady state, you maintain a constant level of water, even though the conditions going in and leaving are constantly changing, but you have a maintenance of this water level in the bathtub. This is basically what dynamic steady state means. You have a steady state of water level, but it's dynamic because of the water flowing in and exiting, meaning it is not stagnant. And so you maintain the gradients for homeostasis. So 3 main terms to know that there could be a flux to maintain homeostasis, biological cells are in dynamic steady states, and the maintenance of life requires energy. And biochemistry follows the rules of thermodynamics. You cannot forget those rules of thermodynamics. The first law being the conservation of energy. Conservation of energy. And the other laws will go on as we continue the course, but the total energy of the universe always remains constant. And this is where I'd like to end off for this video, and for the next video I'll talk about Gibbs free energy.